Here we are in episode 70 of the Simple Success Podcast, and
this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective.
Beats of coaching. Is it okay if I say coaching? Yes, DT, it's fine. Okay, coaching from an overcautious perspective. Think of it as coaching happiness.
When you change you change everything.
So, what's with the overcaution? What do you mean? I am not displaying overcaution. I am in fact incensed that you would even suggest such a thing.
Did you say incense? I like chamomile incense.
Yeah. Where are we?
Oh, it is just great to be a helpful part of this team.
Yeah, but being overcautious, we have to think twice about allowing any additional team members, even ones as smart as Fred, right? You do change everything when you change yourself. Please say right. Okay, right. Right after I say, you just can't be overcautious about it. As if I knew what to do. Well, you could always put it in your daily digest, but we'll talk about that more soon. So, since you're connecting positive thinking to investing, yes, DT, I'm guessing that it's not a stretch to say that Think and Grow Rich is somehow involved again. Oh, you're quite the quick study, DT. Thanks, but I've had plenty of time to practice, and I think I've gotten to know you a bit better as well. That's good. So how's it involved? It's pretty simple. We're continuing on with the next thing in the list on page 335 of the original 1937 unedited edition of Think and Grow Rich. We're picking up where we left off last week, and where we left off previous to that in episodes 65, 66, and 67. Wrapping around the Tax Freedom Day thing? Yep, which reminds me to dig for that rewind sound you'll hear in future episodes. So the focus again is that severe disease known as the fear of poverty, and the 6 symptoms of the fear of poverty, as Napoleon Hill calls it. Exciting stuff, Maestro. So what's this week's thing, this overcaution? It is very important to understand. Napoleon Hill even defines it for us. For some people, overcaution is used as an excuse to have a certain viewpoint. A reason to not think differently? Well, that does pretty much sum it up sometimes. Anytime you do too much research, you risk, I don't take any chances. You mean you don't take any chances at all? Well, I don't know. I guess I do. I can't decide. That I just don't feel like I have control. You just said some really key things, DT. You can't decide, and you don't feel like you have control. But we can control when we take breaks, can't we? Yeah, we can. Don't forget, we've got some good examples coming up in the middle act, the example part. Is that why that's called that? You know, Donnie Thomas, sometimes you are a serious risk of heart trouble. I try. Lead us not into temptation, but instead into...
Break number 1.
Hello, everyone. This is John with the Simple Success Podcast, financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Because we know you want to show us some serious love in return for the tremendous benefits you get from us. Please head over to the support link in our written show notes. That's the words on your podcast player. There, you can choose from a $9.99 per month doing level of support, a $4.99 knowing level, or a basic intro level of just 99 cents per month. Great place to start, whichever you choose. Thank you so much for helping us do this for you. And to leave us a voice message, which just might see the light of day in a future podcast, go to those same written show notes. You'll go to a site where you can leave a video, audio, or text-only message, depending on how you feel at the moment. You can also send us an audio file attached to an email if you use just more than your phone for stuff. I won't repeat those links because weird. And anyway, show notes. It's all in there, and it's all easy. I will run 100 miles before I eat anything today. That's one way to come back from a break. Alstublieft, kind sir. That's Dutch for thank you, listeners. But I fear you distract from the import of the statement itself. Poor, pitiful me, my liege. Whatever didst thou mean? Oh, that's using an intentional paradox to put an end to silly thinking. Which will relate to investing, I assume? It will. Use the patience thing in the meantime. Okay, can we reset a bit? Maybe. How so? A simple definition would help, so that we all start from the same place. Okay, that's easy. Dictionary.com says that overcautious is an adjective meaning excessively or unnecessarily cautious.
So, doing too much of the cautious thing.
Seems like it.
Let's add a little Wikipedia to that, shall we?
No, let's not.
Why? You haven't come to your senses, have you?
I don't think so. But I also don't think that detail about some Civil War generals being overcautious is actually helpful for what we're talking about.
Okay, maybe we can spend this time with some of those dreaded examples.
Oh, they're not that bad. Especially not if they help make this clearer.
Anything from World War II? An easy, steady one?
Well, Britain's Chamberlain attempting to negotiate with Hitler is certainly overcaution. And the classic Kodak not wanting to release digital film or digital cameras? Great example.
Can you say more about that?
Sure, it's a virtual poster child for what not to do.
How so?
So, Kodak, the biggest maker of film, and at least as far as I knew growing up, the only maker of film before Fuji and a few other places. A fact which is not in the least bit true, as it turns out.
Go on.
Anyway, they virtually invented digital film and digital cameras, but they wouldn't make or sell them.
Huh?
No, they would not market or sell these things.
Why not?
They had extreme risk aversion to the possibility that they would eat up their own market.
You mean they were afraid?
Well, translated to SEO speak, yeah.
But they ate up themselves instead.
They did just that, DT. They could have continued their dominance, just in a new way, but they were too short-sighted.
And now everything is digital. Photos, anyway. Nobody uses film or developing anymore.
Well, almost nobody. But it's really important to remember that overcaution can bite you, just like it did with me recently with a well-known service involving the transfer of personal cash.
Is this the famous service name here story?
Yeah, I tried to be smart and test their system, so I would get an answer to a question that the customer service people wouldn't be experienced enough to talk about.
Decisive action. Sounds reasonable.
Action amid uncertainty. Yes, I thought so, but unfortunately, there's no testing when it comes to money, at least as far as they're concerned.
But testing your personal limits is what it's all about, right?
It's very important to do that, yes. Just like it's important to have and show courage. Overcaution can be exemplified by the reluctance of most people to fly, even now, more than 2 years after the pandemic started.
And there's just routine pessimism, which can lead to indigestion and all sorts of bad health.
That's true. And one final thing on this.
What's that, John?
I think it's a wise thing to assume that major gas companies are researching how to acquire, distribute, and monetize electricity. I expect that by 2027, there will be, for example, Chevron electric stations or Exxon electric stations or Shell electric stations in addition to their gas stations.
Or petrol stations for our global friends, unlike gasoline here in the United States.
Right. And so that's an example of not being overcautious, of seeing the opportunity and taking it.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
True. Just don't think so much that you don't do anything.
I promise. Can we now please make reference to the holy grail of good investing?
You mean whether or not we can control things? Sure.
But first, break number 2.
We know a lot about you already because we know ourselves. For example, we know that you know how to listen to our podcast. We also know that you probably know how to subscribe. So as soon as you're done with that, tell us your story. We have ways you can contact us. It involves a special link where you can leave us a message. We may have an email address for you as well in the future, and we'll let you know if that happens. The reason for subscribing? I thought you'd never ask. When you subscribe, you automatically download all future episodes of that podcast. It just happens in your player without you having to go search again. How cool is that? This means better rankings for the podcast, more attention from advertisers, and more money. And this means more and better stuff for you. So your motivation is simple and easy. Subscribe today, whatever app and from whatever place you like. And don't just try to subscribe. There is no try. There is only do. We're changing the way we look at things, and remember, that's good. Eso es buenísimo. Also remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. Our call to action is right in the show notes. Find it, and you win too.
Okay, dude, no more elevated risk. It's showdown time. Millions of people are hanging on these words.
How's that, DT?
You know the drill. You have to tie this bit of overcaution into investing. Good luck with that.
Oh, man. By now you should know that this is not a problem.
I can do it, he says.
I can. That's a key message here.
All right, John, you can. Great, go ahead. Go ahead and do it. Let's just see.
Okay, do you remember the Wall Street cheat sheet?
Vaguely, John. You're going to have to bring that one back. In fact, we could probably do a whole episode on just that.
Yeah, you're right, DT. But for now, I want to invest and not be overcautious.
Well, good, because that's what you'd be expected to do, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's my goal to have you all feel that way too. So here's how the cheat sheet goes. Remember how in the early part of the graph, when the investor was still in disbelief and was enjoying overcaution then, maybe it may have been prudent. That's still debatable, but worth considering. Now let's move on. The next noun was hope. Was there overcaution there? Yes, there was. Hope is important and a great start, but it's not the same as knowing or visualizing. You can't just hope you're going to win. You have to see yourself winning. And then there was a third noun.
And what was that?
Optimism.
A good thing to have, no?
Yes, another good thing to have, DT, if it doesn't keep you from winning the game. And this is when the market had started to turn back up and was gaining steam. But the investor wasn't convinced yet.
They weren't convinced yet?
No, they weren't convinced yet. And with 10 more nouns in that graph before it starts all over again. And what did they do instead? They held back. They were overcautious.
Sounds appropriate, I think.
Appropriate for agency bureaucrats, you mean? But we tie it in with goals. Just set your goals like we've talked about. Decide what they're going to be. Decide how much you're going to put in. Decide how much you want to get out or when. And then let it go and move on.
No caution at all?
Oh, it's okay to have a little bit of caution. To be a little bit prudent. Just don't be too cautious. And most definitely, do not be overcautious.
How would you know if you're doing it right?
Oh, well, you let your goals include that. So you don't have to change your goal when reality rears its proverbial ugly head. And when you do it right,
as you will,
yes, as you will, you do it every time. Including your goals is practice, right?
And what about repetition?
Want to know really?
Oh, did I just walk into that thing where Napoleon Hill has to say the repetition bit one more time?
Yeah, but don't worry. Since we also talk about patience here, this will just fly by.
And then repetition is a marvelous thing, too. The conscious mind finally gets tired of hearing you say a thing over and over and over. It's all right if you bound to repeat that. I can't stand here and watch you forever. Go on in there and take it into sub and see what you do with it. That's the way it works.
Which is how you've all gotten good.
Gracias por escuchar.
A la prochaine. This podcast and our other podcast are productions of Little Red Hen Industries. The supporting cast who helps me bake the bread includes
Techno King, John C. Brandy, Fact Checker, Abraham Lincoln, French Consultant, Virginia Mitchell, Media Expert, Favor, Abasi E.K., Psychologist, William James, Rabbit Hole Advisor, Dr. Mark Perrott, Sound Designer, Goodly Amo, Marconi, Spanish Consultant, Cameron J.K. Brandy, Videographer, Alfred Hitchcock, Audio Props, Les Paul, Inspiration, Napoleon Hill and Earl Nightingale.
We also have websites, and you can subscribe to both podcasts and get ebooks and other great stuff. You can send us a video, audio, or text message, but of course, you'll have to head to the show notes, either on your phone or on the web to actually get links and stuff. And those clickable links are in the show notes.
And before we forget, the artificial intelligence or AI voices you hear in our work come from the online tone generator, linked in the show notes.
Finally, you can find us on Podmatch and Listen Notes, where we consider guests as well as consider guesting on other people's pods.
And really finally, the music for our pods comes from Cute by Ben Sound and from Piano Background by Nick Simon Adams. The sound effects credits go to Jackson Academy Ashmore, Just Kidding, Canusi G, Dr. Jekyll, Joe Payne, Everything Sounds and ERH, all on freesound.org.